beseech you. You must order the surrender.
How could it come to this? An army of rabble, peasants. Everything will change. Everything has changed.
Though he eventually surrendered, Cornwallis himself hid in shame.
So everyone, I've been meaning to do more videos, but just been sick. Something's definitely going around. But the scene here is from the movie called The Patriot by Mel Gibson. It talks about the American Revolution and how the United States beat the English in a war and we gained our independence, and we celebrate that every July 4th every year. But there's one phrase from the scene that I can't help but correlate to today, which is when he says, "How could it have come to this, an army of peasants and an army of rebels?" I can't help but feel if that's how the English feel about all their opposition in a lot of these major soccer tournaments, where they're like, how could they have lost to what they presume to be an inferior team on paper? Because what the experts and the analysts keep saying is that the English have the most talented roster on paper. How could they possibly lose? They have the better players. They have the more talented players. In today's video, I kind of wanted to address that. I kind of wanted to touch on that and see, like, do you really have the better players? Or is it just hype? Like, are your players just overhyped instead of being better players? So this comment here, it says, the British media have always overhyped young talent and then crucified them when they don't meet expectations. It is a tale as old as time. So for that, I wanted to go back in time. See, let's take the 1999 Ballon d'Or. David Beckham finished in second. As for the guy who finished in first, never heard of him. Meaning, like, it's not that I haven't heard of him, but when I was growing up in the United States in the early 2000s and the 2010s, soccer was not very popular as a sport. You could not turn on a channel and just watch an English Premier League game like you can right now. You couldn't turn on the TV and watch the UEFA Champions League as easily as you can right now. But that all changed in the coming decades after that. So the Champions League became a lot more accessible, and soccer really started to take off in the US. But what gets me is that even back then, when you couldn't catch soccer games as easily, mind you, a lot of these years are also before the days of YouTube, you heard of David Beckham. David Beckham was more popular in the United States than the sport of soccer. That's what it was. So, not to take away from Beckham as a player, like as a player, David Beckham was an exceptional player. The way he did free kicks and the way he crossed the ball, he was an exceptional player. Some could say he was even world class, but he was not in the same league, in my opinion, as someone like a Zinedine Zidane. He just wasn't in that same league. Yet somehow, he was more popular and more famous than Zidane, at least in the United States. Which gets me to, like, the whole point of this video, which is the bar just lower for a lot of English players to gain fame, popularity, and just be known? Like, do English players just not have to be as good to be recognized as world class? Right now, I probably lean more towards yes. For example, and I know I'm going to lose a lot of followers with this, I don't believe that Jude Bellingham is really that exceptional as they make it seem to be. Now, this soccer Reddit here is like very tongue-in-cheek. It's supposed to be sarcasm, so they're like making fun of people who criticize Jude Bellingham. And as you can see, some of these comments are very tongue-in-cheek, but this one here gets me, where it's like, yes, he's one of the best players of his generation, but the glazing is insane. And I agree with that, because here you have, for example, Ancelotti comparing him to Zidane, and I'm like, whoa, slow down over here. Like, he reminds me of Zidane, but not only does he remind me of Zidane, there's things he does better than Zidane, like how he gets into the box, and few players in the world can match his movement for his first goal. Like, In my opinion, Ancelotti sounds like an idiot. But my point is that there we go. Like Bellingham, like let's give him his credit. He had an exceptional season at Real Madrid. There were times in the Euro where I feel like he truly bailed out his team. Like if he was not on the pitch, England would have probably been eliminated in the round of 16. Like he had some amazing moments and he has come through for Real Madrid. He had an exceptional season. Let's not take away from that. Like let's not take away that in this past season he was probably one of the best players. Let's not take away from any of that. Let's not take away from the exceptional things he did at Dortmund. But I'm like, slow down. Like, let's let the guy have a little bit more success and prolonged success at a major club before we say he's the second coming of Zidane. Like, it's insane. Because let's compare Bellingham, yeah, to someone like Kylian Mbappe, who has already won a World Cup, pulled France to extra time against Argentina, like brought them from behind in the very recent World Cup. They lost on penalties, but 2 World Cup finals in a row for Mbappe. He does not get the same level of respect that Bellingham's getting right now, which once again proves my point, which is the bar is just lower for English players. And we're seeing the same thing play out, right? Like, for example, in 1999, Beckham lost to Rivaldo, who, by the way, we never heard of him in the US at that time, for the Ballon d'Or. Well, let's look at who is recognized as the top midfielder right now from ESPN. It's Rodri. And in my opinion, Rodri is going to get robbed for a Ballon d'Or. Even though he, number one, has had way more good seasons than Bellingham. Number two, not only has he had the good seasons he has had, his team, his side, faced off against Bellingham's side. And if we are to believe the experts, in the Euro 2024 final, they were the more talented team. And by they, I mean the English. The English had the best players. Rodri and his side beat Bellingham and the British. But where's the recognition and respect for him? Like, why is he not getting the respect that Bellingham is getting? Why is he not being compared to some of the all-time greats? Why is he not? But why is Bellingham getting that respect? It's just this double standard. Like, in my opinion, if an English player is above average, they recognize him as world class. But players of other nationalities have to be world class to be recognized as world class. Case in point, Messi or Ronaldo. They had to put together so many good seasons to get the recognition they did. But you get someone like Bellingham, who, again, I'm not taking away from the fact that this guy's an exceptional player, but doesn't have to do all that much to get the fame that he gets. It's really just, it's sad to see, right? And here, I know this Twitter user is getting a lot of hate, but he really talks about Bellingham in an objective way that I agree with, which is he is a one-dimensional player who is not great defensively, and his ability to control a game is overrated. And I do believe like his ego is going to be his downfall, because when you have Mbappe and Bellingham on the same team at Madrid, I don't believe they're going to get along. I don't believe that they're going to be able to have that successful of a season. I believe that it's going to be a season for Madrid where I won't be shocked if they don't even make the Champions League final. And speaking of finals and speaking of the Rodri side in Spain that beat England in the Euro 2024 final, I must ask, where's the respect for somebody like Lamine Yamal, right? We want to talk about youth. Lamine Yamal is not even old enough to drink legally in the United States, but he's not getting the media hype that Bellingham got. He's not, despite the fact that he's performed so well on an international stage. What about Nico Williams? Where's the respect for Nico Williams? Where is it? Like, the same Nico Williams who scored against England in the most recent Euro final and helped, I believe he was involved in the scoring of another goal that effectively sealed it in that final. But we're not talking about Nico Williams. We're not talking about Lamine Yamal. We're not talking about Rodri. We're talking about Bellingham. I mean, the glazing for a lot of these English players, and it's not just Bellingham, it's almost like every single English player, it's insane. I really do believe it's insane. I do believe that it is insane how the bar is just lower for a lot of these English players who, quite frankly, are overhyped on paper. So I don't believe that in a lot of these tournaments, England has the better side. I just believe that they have the more overhyped side because the bar is lower for English players to get recognition. English players don't have to be great. They don't have to be great to be considered great. They just have to be decent. And if they're great, they get considered world class and they get considered the second coming of a Zidane or a second coming of a Messi. I won't be shocked. Like, they get considered that. But then you have someone like a Nico Williams or a Lamine Yamal who is just tearing it up on the international stage, or someone like a Rodri who's done it well for many seasons, and they don't get the recognition. So the next time a lot of these experts and a lot of these analysts, they come and say like, oh, well, bloody hell, how can England lose when they have the better players? I'm like, really? Get out of here, man. You don't have the better players on paper. You're not the better team on paper. You're the more overhyped team on paper, and you always are. You always will be. Like, you always were. You never had the most talented roster. You just had the most recognized roster. You had the most hyped up roster because your media pushes these players as being better than they actually are. That's just my take on it as an American. But, just ending on a silver lining and a good note, I feel like the good part is that, at least in my opinion, it does come full circle, right? It's like history repeats itself in this whole process because it's going to keep on happening. Like, maybe in a couple of years as we roll around to the World Cup, I won't be shocked if the media says Bellingham is better than Ronaldo ever was or Messi ever was. I won't be shocked. They'll probably go down this route. And England are going to enter the World Cup. And Bellingham is going to choke along with the whole English side. And they're going to lose. And it's going to happen again in the Euro after that. And then the World Cup after that. That's what's going to happen. So they're going to keep on hyping these guys up. I'm like, go hype these guys up. Like, do it. Because it's just that much sweeter, I guess, for everybody else in the whole world when your team loses and your side loses. Because I'm really tired of this hype. I'm tired of this hype. I'm tired of this double standard. And I hate the fact that English players don't have to be world class to be considered world class. But that's just my opinion.